And so many other wonderful names that we like to go by, all valid and worthy. And so with that, I'll call to order to see if Judge does want to lead us to the pledge.
Please join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Right. Here. Here.
Director Silva is absent. Vice President Curry. Here. Junior Vice President Tiffany.
Present. Here. Great. You have translation services available. Si hay alguien que necesita la ayuda de intérprete, se puede accesar ese servicio por Zoom. El número o código para esa junta es 895-8075-5052 con el código o passcode 381610. All right, with that announcement has been made, any changes to the agenda?
No,
All right, so then we will skip the approval of the agenda and move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to share comments regarding items not on today's agenda, but within the purview of this agency. We invite folks to use. Will we have folks? Will we do this?
one live person there.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and invite folks to make public speaking.
Yeah. And so I think, first of all, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. And second, just to say that we did reach some tentative agreements at our last meeting. We're down to about 5 or 6 issues that I think are very important and need to look at. So the first thing I'd like to do, if I could, actually, there's copies of the consumer price index. One of the reasons that I think it's important for us to understand this document, oh, I call it, those are my favorite. There's a mark that a lot of cities use to determine what to offer employees based on their buying power, against city revenue or revenue. We said this is the control use contract had December CPI index for the Bay Area. Take a look at that column and you'll see that it was 1.2% in the summer, and then every other month, it happens twice a year, twice a month, the Bay Area index, so that it's now up to 5%. If you look at the CPI index that my dad has to live with, the Social Security, so it's actually up one. The US is not, so it's going up to 8.2%, 8.6. That's what my dad is suffering under, person on the fixed income. Now, I say that because I think it's important for you to accept it and look at. Yes, we are essential workers. We provide the services throughout this process, but I think it's important for you to acknowledge, recognize, and compensate your employees for a fair and just wage for what they do on behalf of the community that we serve. The second thing that I think is important is I talked about the other day. The contracts that a lot of you have, they're equitable. We agree that if a person does something wrong, they should deserve fair and just one that's called just cause. If there's a violation of the FOU, for some reason we have different interpretation of the contract, it's not a fair and equitable way of looking at it. We live under the rule of law. You live under the rule of law. One of the rules of law that we look at are things like a grievance, unjust termination should not be ended with the general manager giving the final resolution. So you actually created a copy of an alternative dispute resolution process in 2005 when you guys first started. And this fair way is what we're looking for. The fair way is having somebody independent of the union or the general manager making the final resolution on an unjust termination or a summary violation. Implement this policy, then that would be a way to resolve these disputes fairly. The last thing I want to share with you is Any contract in this community, look at copy down. This is a copy of the contract with the city of Salinas next door. It's saying on the ones, and it has 4 or 5 things that we're looking for. These are the city of Salinas is there. We think it's there, and we hope that you will be the service also.
This policy, then that would be a way of resolving this concern.
Para implementar esta política,
Any contract in this community.
cualquier contrato
Please look at this contract, that is 4 issues in there, I'll send you a separate communication with her and all.
Anybody else? This time, we'll go ahead and close the public comment and bring it on to. Committee, commission. All right, so with that, we are at the strategic planning workshop portion of our agenda, and in consider the welcome given, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to. And today, why?
Well, I want to thank all of you for taking your afternoon to do this. It's been long overdue. It's been a while since we've done a strategic planning retreat. I think, considering the new environment we're moving into, I think this is the perfect time for us to get together and plot the future course for the authority. So I'm going to start by just giving you a few quick updates, general thoughts. Tomorrow is actually a very important day, I think, for the agency in general. A couple of things are occurring tomorrow. Our new organics processing vendor is starting tomorrow morning. They've been moving the equipment and they're all hands on board. And we're very, very excited about bringing new technology. Something this agency has been very involved with for many years. There's been many ways to convert and expand the recovery of materials and reduce our dependence on landfills. The second thing that's happening tomorrow is really the first step in our relocation. Tomorrow morning, we will begin hauling refuse at the Madison Lake Transfer Station. Caesar is still here, which is a good sign. We've got a lot of it coordinated, but he disappears. It's not taking offense on. It's a lot of work for him to get his staff coordinated and ready to begin that work in the morning. That's what's starting tomorrow. Okay. That's the 2 things that we've done with the relocation. One is transfer services, they're a big start on that. Because they're tied to the rates, the things that we made concessions on in those negotiations. So the transfer starts tomorrow. The relocation, there are still ongoing discussions. We had a meeting last Friday, there are other meetings scheduled for a week from tomorrow with county, city, public services, and authority representatives to work through some of the questions that have been raised. When we're at the staff level, sort of looking at where we're at, we'll likely be requesting that the relocation be pushed back at least 1 month, with the hopes that next week we'll have clear resolution and a certain date everybody can agree on, and that whatever issues are outstanding will be handled appropriately. So we can begin our 60-day public outreach. That's the most important. Board approved. We do a 60-day plan as a public. We basically lost a month at this point because we've been working through these sort of challenges in the background between the county and the public. So because of that, we are going to request we push it back 1 month so that we hopefully next week we'll have clarity on that moving forward. I'll have comfort that there are no outstanding issues that might have an impact on this agency, and then we can begin to plug in that date and really robustly move forward, letting our customers and public know about any change. So that's an update on where we are right now in the relocation. One of the things that we saw a presentation last month on advanced technology. This agency has been very involved in looking and studying advanced technology. We continue to work with the USDA under some federal grant work. We're assisting them with some evaluations of autoclaving, which some of you know has been a long-standing technology that the agency's been involved in studying and interested in. So with that, I may come forward at some point in the next several months begin talking about possibly reconstituting the authorities, converting technology committee, something similar to that. Where we get a small subcommittee of board members involved, looking at ways to advance waste recovery beyond this curbside assignment. The board, historically, the board has been very involved and interested in advancing that ball down the court of being less and less dependent on landfills as time goes on. So with that, we're continuing again to look at that. We saw some presentation material with a number of projects that we've discussed in the past, where we are talking about how those things can be integrated into specifically our organic recovery. Really is where the focus. And then finally, a couple of exciting things. Since we are now proud owners of an office building, the sale of the building being closed yesterday, the meeting was recorded this morning. So the staff are very excited to move into the new office. We were talking a little bit more about that in August board meeting. So we talk about things like we want to build a board, definitely have space for a community room that can be used either for public meetings, authority meetings, or community gatherings. So that is in our sort of vision plan for how we repurpose that office into this office space. We also have our public education center in Constantine. Core building has been installed, and it's all made with cargo containers, so sort of modern design and prefab buildings. Standard cargo containers. And of course, with the new office building, we also have an opportunity to have more centric education center at the office for the greater Salinas area to supplement the work that we can do now at the education center. That would include potentially bringing the garden area out there as a new office training, bringing that into the property at the time we sell Sunstreet. Our city manager about that. He didn't seem to indicate any significant concern. It's not a little large area that allows to keep the garden we've been using for many, many years to train local students and service workers on the art of composting. So with all those things said, that start this year, forward tomorrow, and looking forward to the input for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Before I turn over to manager partners, we just want to share that I've been lucky enough to play some role in this particular agency for about 50 years. The background as supervisor, so there's some capital on this board. And we have to remember that those of us who are lucky enough to sit in these seats are representing the public, their interests, their desires, and their vision. And so as we work through today, I hope that everybody will carry that. I know we all know it's elected, it's lucky to call you all friends and know all of you and what drives you. But we have to kind of remove our hats from the other jurisdictions that we serve on and focus on the work of this particular body. What Patrick just outlined were some of the great things we've been able to achieve under the previous plan and the focus, but focus can be renewed, made, changed, and redirected. That is what we are elected to do on behalf of the constituents we serve. And so I just want to thank you all for taking the time to reduce busy schedules, making the trip down from North County, Salinas, here to Gonzales, which is the geographic center pretty much of the jurisdictions we serve, to help in this work. I think it's important that we're all come together. I apologize that it took so long to get us all together, but as we reopen schedules have been crazy. I do want to apologize to the public for having back studio. It's not intentional. It's just sort of the best setup for the particular type of work. And so with that, I'm happy to turn it over to the folks who are going to lead us through today. Manager Marcus to make some introductions and let us get better.
Yes, good afternoon. Hello, how is everybody?
Great.
Well, good, smiles.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a fast-paced afternoon of conversation. Is to really ask questions and focus on your conversations. It's really your meeting, your discussion. But I do want to start just by giving Project kudos. This agency has established strategic plans, the strategic planning session. We consider it a strategic plan And as it relates to due diligence, you've done all the right things. You've established a strategic plan, and on a regular basis, you've reported results. We have met with all of you either together or one of us has met with each of you in order to hear what your interests are for the future. And there's a quote that I like to tee up at each one of these sessions, and I found it from a leadership group who, and it's so true. You can accomplish a lot less than you think you can in a year, but a lot more than you think you can in 5 years. And that's the real value of strategic planning. It's the real value of the strategic planning we have in place right now. And so our role today, Megan and myself, will be leading you through that conversation based on an approach that we designed specifically for you as a client, based on what we've heard in those interviews. My name is Steve Butterfield. I'm management partner, so senior manager. This is Monica Gonzalez. She's one of our special economic spiritual associates. We're going to help facilitate today's session. I also just want to offer the one shameless plug, the local government Hispanic network. I serve as the executive director of the Association of Hispanic and Latino professionals in local government, and I have served as the president and a long time. Not that long. The caliber reputation still exists. So with that, I want to jump in and kind of set the stage, ground rules, agenda, and then we're going to jump into the conversation. So today our workshop objectives, we're going to be celebrating our strategic plan accomplishments. One of the challenges, as you all know, with COVID is that staff members, elected officials, and community members haven't gathered. And you don't, I mean, I mentioned earlier, Zoom just doesn't do it. So today is a real opportunity to come together and have those candid conversations, but also just to take stock in this organization's accomplishments. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the goals for the next 3 to 5 years. We're also going to invite you to prioritize those. We're going to have you get up and move around a little bit. So we've had our welcome, public comments, general manager's comments. After I go through the agenda, we're going to have a little icebreaker conversation. And in addition to putting fresh eyes on the vision and the mission, and having you all prioritize strategies for the next 5 years. One of the things we heard real loudly, and again, this is not unique to this district board, is COVID has really shown a light on the need to establish governing norms, and there's not an engagement that we've facilitated in the last 6 months. We haven't talked about norms because it has been very challenging. And those are critical. That kind of structure provides support for governance and high quality decision making. So we'll get into that as well. These are some of our ground rules. I see whoever is comfortable being masked or unmasked, please do so. We encourage you to listen with an ear to understand, be curious, ask questions, participate, assume one another's best intent and good intent. If you feel that we're getting off track, let us know, course correction. And if there are issues that arise, but they're outside the agenda, we're going to create a bike route. I will keep track of those. At the end of this engagement, Magda and I will prepare a workshop report. It'll summarize the conversation, the priorities, but we'll also have a list of those bike route issues that will be teed up at a later date and a future agenda. So let's just get warmed up. We'd like to hear from each of you. What is the greatest lesson you have learned as a leader from either a success or a miss? What is the greatest lesson you have learned as a leader from a success or something that didn't go as it would? Any volunteers? Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Don't count them. Don't. Give us an example.
No, I've just had the experience of counting on things going a certain way that that they didn't. So I just learned to keep a more open mind and open mind. And be curious in all conversations, right?
John, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I've been in government 8 years. I'm just amazed that why not urgency getting things, able to get things done. In the private sector, I was at a function last night. I was said to two high executives decided and said that they would go crazy with how, and it's the way it's supposed to be. You get public input, but when you see something in your district, it's urgent, you got to get to really get done. And it takes you something that should take us setting here a week and a half to get that. It takes us years. And that's the frustrating thing. Government is designing that way around that. Everything we have to do. Public scrutiny sounds great, except when you're trying to get things that.
Yeah, that's great. So are you saying the greatest lesson with people is patience?
Yeah, well, I know. I love that very well. It's supervisor building has content patience.
You special to support your patients. Yeah, right.
And the bottle of Scotch.
Great.
Well, I learned that there is success within failure, and it's okay to fail if you fail forward. You learn from your mistakes and helps you guide how to succeed next time you try it.
So are there tactics that you use to reflect on a failure so that you can really kind of tease out the takeaways?
I try to be introspective and ask myself differently. Did I not communicate properly? Where did I feel like I lost people's support along the way? And what kind of differently that, have people be more open to my ideas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm gonna take it a step further, but when there are misses or failures, if we can be less judgmental about it being good or bad, then you can have that kind of open conversation around learning, right? Yeah, cool.
I'd say, for me, I think the biggest lesson is evolution is just as powerful as revolution. There's a lot of folks who want 100% today. And for me, I'd rather move the needle 30% because I'm like, I don't know, if I can move it 30% each year, within 3 years, you're done. Right, so showing people what's possible without freaking them out by, a little each year is important. So.
Right. Because there's significant consequences when we don't bring people along in the process, right?
What's kind of a couple of pieces. The first piece is you can't make everybody happy. Somebody's always going to have odds with any decision you make, regardless of what it is. And the corollary to that is successes aren't always successes, failures aren't always failures. It depends on who's looking at them. Because one person's success is another person's failure. You may have a group in your community that thinks it's a success, another group thinks it's a failure, and it's all depending upon their perspective. And you can't discount either one.
Yeah, that personal and parochial interests versus public good. Right?
Well, and it's even more than just that, because again, even different groups of the public think different ways too.
That's right.
So and again, it goes back to you can't make everybody happy.
Right.
You can try your best to make everybody happy, but ultimately you have to look at what's best for the city as a whole or the authority as a whole, not just what's best for your little piece of it.
And what the president said when we opened the meeting, that we wear a hat, or you
Right.
all wear hats serving a specific jurisdiction.
Exactly.
But when you sit on this board, you serve the interests of the district.
Exactly.
Right? Thank you. Mayor?
I would say uncomfortable conversations are okay.
Yeah.
That is, I think when I first started in local government, the intent was to be everyone's friend, right? And to have everyone like you. And I've learned through the last 10 years that as long as you can communicate what you're trying to accomplish, and you do the homework behind it, that you earn respect and you gain respect despite the uncomfortable conversations. And then the other side to that, I would say, is compromise is key. I would come in, you know, swinging a bat, and really what that does is just alienate everyone in the room. And so if you can figure out like, hey, if I want 100 and this person wants 0, we can settle even at what I think is 30%. 30% is still better than 0. So for me, it's really been a maturing experience to learn to compromise, even if it's not at a 50-50 level. If you can walk out of there and nobody's really happy, but you push the ball down the field, like, then that's a success.
That maturity, well, that's very mature to offer that perspective. And I think for all of us in government, being able to transform a conversation from position to interest, you get a lot more accomplished, right? Essentially what you're saying, instead of coming in with. Great, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, again, Mayor said, no. Appreciation of a difference of opinions. I think what it does, gives me the opportunity to look at it from a different perspective and trying to gain, you know, an empathy or understanding from while they're approaching the issue or the problem and trying to come to a compromise or resolution. It may not satisfy them, but it's in the best interest of the whole. So getting that input and trying to understand the
Have any of you been in the room where there's been a hot topic discussed and you realize midway through the conversation that there is not clarity on what question the group is responding to?
All the time.
And how enlightening it is when someone pauses and says, wait a minute, why are we here, right? After you've been frustrated, usually the frustration, you know, John's probably in that meeting and he says, okay, wait a minute. We got, 7 people talking. So, good. Anything else anybody wants to offer? Patrick, how about you? Any thoughts on?
My class is pretty simple. It's about some goal, sport goal, staff goal, mission goal. Just recognizing one stand. As you know, achieve one goals, always gonna have setbacks. For me, it's about reset. How do you reset? I mean, very good after the same. Just one second. Reset's not. It's a goal and to influence your path towards picking yourself up goals. So, currently pick yourself up and then you just go back at it.
I appreciate that.
So it's about the reason.
Great. Thank you. So again, today, we're gonna be, as you requested, really putting fresh eyes on your strategic plan. And we like this slide, sort of in the direction. And release them anyway. But the strategic plan's intent is to provide direction to the organization, align people to a common purpose, and then create opportunities to update strategies, as well as really celebrate successes and accomplishments. And public agencies do not do enough of that. So if you don't have it as a standing item on your agenda, I encourage you to put it on standing item. Take some stock and hard work that you've done. So with that, again, in our interviews, what we heard from you all was really an interest in addition to putting fresh eyes on goals and priorities, spending some time talking about governing norms. In anticipation for today's session, we sent out an article from the Institute of Local Government as well as some example norms, just to set the stage. We'll spend some time talking about those today. But right now in your strategic plan, these are your established strategic plan values: fiscal prudence, resourcefulness, customer service, community partnerships, innovation, integrity, public education, and efficiency. And actually in the general manager's opening comments, I heard a lot of the strategies and tactics related to that. So this organization certainly is well aligned in its service delivery and outcomes. So you all know that you know the power of the organization stems from the foundation of a strong relationship between the board and the general manager. That partnership where the board sets the policies, staff deals with the day-to-day operation, and there's a high degree of communication and collaboration. Again, some of the themes that we heard, Magda and I, there's interest on the part of this group to governance and board relationships, provide equitable administrative support, ensure clear guidelines about board agenda prep and supporting documentation. Also an interest to review the JPA member jurisdictions contributions and its relationship to the revenues and the forecasts. And just a standing item, just an overview on a regular basis. So go ahead.
I just had a question. So I took a couple of years off between being on council and being mayor. When was the last strategic plan completed?
Well, I think last cycle in
2018. So this is the 2018 strategic plan. This is 2022. Good, thank you.
So as it relates to the attributes of exceptional councils, this is a nice article, and I know many of you participated in the training and either through the district or the authority, or maybe through your member jurisdiction. I'll just review real quickly. You've got the article in front of you. Exceptional councils and boards create a sense of team and partnership, as you mentioned, with your direct report, the general manager, establish clear roles and responsibilities, honor the relationship with staff and each other, routinely conduct effective meetings. I know with Zoom, we've spent a lot of time, this group has not had those challenges, but there are a number of elected bodies that are really struggling with conducting civil productive meetings, which it has been really taxing, I think, both on elected officials as well as on staff. Yes.
Can I ask on that note, your expertise, what would you determine to be the root of that lack of decorum? Is this lack because they're not in the same room, but they have no relationships? What would you determine to be that?
So there's a couple of issues that can precipitate that. Number one is the behavior among the electeds and appointeds. If they don't abide by standard set of and they are behaving with civility, then that can breed the misbehavior. If there are not clear guidelines for the public to participate, I haven't, I don't know if you read, your guidelines to join the meeting, you join for 3 minutes, and these are the 3, 4, 5 things that we expect. If those aren't well documented and they're not regularly verbally communicated, and then when something goes awry, folks aren't held accountable for it, then that's what could precipitate it. As well as one of our beliefs, but this is just management partners, we will not conduct Zoom meetings without being able to visibly see the person that's interacting. Anonymity can sometimes breed that kind of disconnection between accountability. So those are a couple of our recommendations, having people, if you're going to their meetings via Zoom, they visibly there, you can see them. That you review expectations of how long people can participate in the meeting, the kind of language, tone. And then again, if they move beyond those boundaries, that the microphone shut down. And then again, what I started with was, if the elected or appointed are not abiding by, it's a mom and dad, right?
I'd actually like to add related to that, and I think a lot of that was a learning curve involved with it as well. All of a sudden, we dumped all these people that didn't have technology backgrounds into dealing with Zoom or dealing with WebEx or dealing with all these webinar tools that they just weren't ready to do. I think the kids picked it up a little bit faster because they were using it for school, but I know particularly in South County, we have a lot of people that are technologically challenged. And for them, having to call in or having to go find an iPad or go find a desktop or laptop to call into these meetings and then be on camera to do this communication, I think is a new experience for them, and I think we have problems with it. And as Chris Lopez and I were discussing a little while before, is we also have a problem in South County with broadband access as well. And a lot of people don't have that broadband access. So that again precludes them from being able to participate in a Zoom meeting other than maybe on their phone, which then becomes a little bit more problematic.
That's right.
And I could think even on Zoom, if you get upset about it, it's easier to pick a cheap shot if you're not with a person in a meeting like this.
Yeah, but this group sets the tone. I mean, you're all, we know, you're all very experienced, tenured, elected officials. And so that's not an issue. However, we know that there's an interest for this group to establish norms, which is common. And particularly in the midst of COVID, many elections had new members join, but they didn't have the typical kind of like orientation and practice and exposure, which makes norms so much more important to build that foundation. That makes sense.
It does. I think for me, one of the big things is for somebody who's recently elected, transitioning from campaign mode to government.
Yeah.
And we know that even when it's in person for some folks, that's tough. And you have these element. And you know, I've seen some folks throughout the state, not just locally, but even the fight hard to get out of the activist or campaigns and are here to challenge. Well, part of the body, I think here to challenge.
Yeah.
Use that voice in the new way, right? But I think that's where the challenge as well, beyond the easy to throw things all over. So you face that yourself.
You're so right. And it's like to me, we've spent the last 4 sessions, I think, facilitated for elected bodies in the South Bay, East Bay, and North Bay. We have had that discussion, as you're saying, talked a little bit about what does it mean to be a candidate versus because you're on your own, you're competing as compared to what does it mean to be part of the governing body, that you have that shared representation. Yeah, so Stu, thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna add that. I was with the school board referrals in the city council, and the school board realm, I think did a lot of your job. Educating elected board members on what their role is, in terms of legally and how to work. We have something called Masters in Governance program, which is an 8 courses, you have 8 that taught you everything from Brown Act to working with the superintendent, to moving on board. When I got into city council, the League of Cities particularly have like our national governance program. That certainly that was challenging for newly elected council members in the time of COVID.
That's a really good point. There's
Those digital, not every time.
Yeah.
yeah. Unfortunately, it's the jurisdiction. Such where we're actually working with a client in the East Bay right now for assisting them in putting together a new elected official orientation program. And really encouraging them through the course of this next election cycle to bring all their candidates into all of their meetings to get every single one of them to the same level. So whichever one is elected, right, is ready to do their work on the team. Great point, great point. And we'll look at that model too.
What was really helpful about that was you got to meet other people elected school board leaders, and there was that sense of, we also able to meet new people and see what they do in their jurisdictions and kind of that kind of city council, or unless you make it a campaign what their city councilors would be kind of hard.
Having the school board create that network. It's critical, easier for you, right? Yeah.
Speaking to that COVID thing though, when you and I came in January of 2020, and like when I started on council in 2010, the new elected thing with the League of California Cities was great.
Yeah.
Was great. But we didn't have that privilege because ours was on Zoom, like everybody's cameras turned off. Pajama bottoms on bottom half, you know, but so it's sort of like we missed out on, you know, being a new elected leading for the cities. It is, LCC has a great program for new electeds, and we missed out just because of it.
But you can really take advantage of it now. Can you?
I assume.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works. This guy's an old schooler now, so.
Well, I think the same thing about came in, or is that I participated in it in 2019, and it was an amazing experience. You got to meet all the new people that were coming on. They taught you all about what to do, what not to do, how to support yourself, how to keep from yelling at your constituents. They make you mad and things like that. But it was, for us, it was a 2.5 day program.
I just learned that I was gonna be made an example of if I jaywalked. That was like, the end of the block and you cross the block as an elected official. It's jail.
Yeah, things like that. We had social media discussions and things like that, but because the social media rules at that point were just starting to change. And I think that's another key piece as well, as social media has changed the electeds purview at this point.
Well, and that ties back to your communications team, your communications plan, and what your policies and practices are as you represent this agency and your jurisdiction, right? And when you communicate, you're communicating with the head of your elected or appointed position. So, good points. Well, nice discussion. So, if any of you had a chance to peek at the article, we just kind of went through the headers. Anything from that article really resonate with you? We're going to add a note that there really was not appropriate onboarding of new elected officials for these programs with COVID, which, you know, wasn't good for everybody. I think here's from teenagers, you know, what else? Anything else from the article that resonated with you? Say it again.
What's the mention? It seems to me, and I've seen this not just in South County, but I've seen it all over, is there is a group of the population that treats elections as a popularity contest. And the people that get elected don't necessarily agree to follow this. They don't want to follow this. They just want to improve their popularity. And I think that's something that really needs to be pulled out. But again, the thing is, the fact of the matter is, going back to social media and everything else, is how do you determine who's going to be the best fit for something? Is it who puts out the most social media posts? Is it because there's not really been that engagement? There haven't been as many debates, there haven't been as many opportunities to go out and meet candidates and things like that. Through COVID, is you don't have all the discussions that you used to have prior to elections, and you get a lot of people on councils, elected officials that aren't necessarily the right people for the job, but people recognize the name, or people think, oh, it's somebody that looks like me, so I'm going to vote for them.
That is very challenging. That is very challenging. Go ahead.
I'd say the one that resonated with me the most was the last one, which was being, I guess, being a lifelong learner. I think it's important for people who jump into these roles to not feel like I came here with all the answers.
Right.
And not here to just preach.
Yeah.
You know, you're here to learn, involved with the issues as they change. As we know, the state's constantly making rules, which forces us to adapt.
Yeah.
So to me, that point kind of struck. I look for those people who have that ability to adapt and to continue to learn. When I look for the people who vote for, you know, to support, there's that question, is can you adapt?
Absolutely, yeah, respond to the challenges that you're kind of forced to face. Others.
I'd say the first one in residents, community exceptional councils develop a sense of team.
Yeah,
So, you know, management partners, you guys were great with our strategic planning session. We had a really controversial, I don't even remember if it was like the first or second council meeting ever with brand new council and a brand new mayor, and we were, you know, ratifying a union contract, and there was a lot of public opinion about it, and you know, we just had a really good organic conversation at the strategic planning level about making sure that it's not just 4-3-3, 4-4-3, but really trying to figure out what level of compromise to work as a team
yeah,
to try to get to 5-2, to try to get to 6-1. You know, it's like if I want, you know, pepperoni on my pizza, maybe it's a, you know, Patrick doesn't, but if we can do a half and half, that will get the buy-in of Patrick to be able to sign off on the legislation that we're gonna have a half and half pizza, you know, so. Analogy, but to me, it's really sort of talking through and figuring out, because if you're constantly fractured as a board. And the votes, particularly if you have a board of 9, if it's 5-4 or if it's 6-3, because you know there are 3 members from the city of Salinas, that just doesn't help with
Yeah.
relationships. So really trying to figure out how to get to compromise through that process, and you guys were great about really identifying. So we work. I mean, I think we work as a council to try to get there.
and I think what you're saying too, in interest based, thinking of like, getting to yeses. Having a good discussion around where do we have agreement?
Right.
Instead of people tossing out positions, where do we have agreement?
What is it we agree upon? Let's lay that out first. Then we disagree on maybe small in comparison to what we agree on. Really, we'll just concentrate on what we don't agree on.
Yeah, you're not.
We're gonna do anything different.
And that all comes back to having that focus on what's best for the group as a whole, not just for your individual piece of it as well.
Think about the whole body
Right.
of the city, the whole organization, the whole region.
Exactly.
You know, we think about here.
Well, in decision making, I always think of it as you're constantly doing a sort, like where do we have agreement? Where don't we have agreement, and where can we get agreement? And then so you're just constantly like sorting through the elements of the decision or the component of.
And what do you want to give up with the
Yes, compromise.
I have a additional issue that I think it's important to come on these boards as elected representatives.
Prepared.
But everybody assumed, I've been around the county for 43 years that in various capacities that I did it, and I knew I didn't know, it wasn't like Chris who had been working in the county government. Tansy, Glasgow, this and that. But no, that's important, like solid waste, I knew nothing about the workings of this, you really have to go and learn the same way with water.
Yeah.
That was a huge thing that I really didn't.
Did you arrive or spend a day at or?
Like for water, I started meeting with Dolly, whatever it was. Marty, Richard Smith, and I started educating myself, because I knew I didn't know, and I have work to do better. There is the thing that's with some elections come in, well, I'm elected, you know, I know everything without giving them or doing the work of study. If I can't come every year, so why 13 I That's on to try to do.
I know more about garbage and water than I ever thought I would know.
Well, it's,
At least about it, I was gonna need to know all this stuff.
well, that's one of the reasons why I was pushing back to do that whole landfills 101 thing as well, to make sure that we all have a common ground to build on and understand what all went into it.
Exactly how.
Exactly, yeah,
Because you assume, but do you really know?
right. You don't know what goes into the behind the scenes stuff.
What's refreshing to hear how curious you all are and how you transformed in that way, because it's so critical to good decision making. I know Ben, you want to jump in?
Yeah, real quick, I said, I found previous councils of school board, I was trustee as well. And Tansy and all that other stuff, establishing those goals and creating a plan to achieve those, a roadmap to get to those goals that come together as a unit. And create those priorities to achieve them, because a lot of times we'll come with our own personal interests, or let's say your own district's interest, depending on how you're elected. So in a board like this, a large geographic area with different interests, it's important to create those, because that way we can collectively move forward to achieve those and accomplish something as a group.
Yeah, you can't be done unless you focus. And Patrick can't direct the team that's doing what. I mean, you're whacking, but you're not, you're not leveraging. Dealing with the urgent and immediate, but you're not delivering those long-term, those long-term needs or interests. And some of those probably include lobbying, those are long-term decisions.
But the flip side of that is sometimes you do have to play. And that's.
You do what?
Sometimes you do have to sit there and play whack-a-mole and resolve the issues before you can move forward.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the adaptation that
Yeah.
was correct, just being, having the foundation of being prepared to respond to the needs and the interests. Anything else on the article?
Well, yeah, I think we really have to get prepared, but I don't see our board just being workers and staff without analyzing it and using our own judgment.
Absolutely.
I 7 sports, and generally 95% of the time you follow, have a good staff, you follow the recommendation of the staff. There are some boards that we should set on, if you will, wait a minute, sure we're heading in the right direction. This, I think, it's our responsibility to, so it's very easy to come to these meetings and have a consent agenda and go to the next, but I think we have an obligation to analyze it, maybe change the direction.
Absolutely. And as you said, when elected officials and appointed officials are doing their homework, that provides that kind of framework. I know you guys aren't doing this. There are some elected bodies that kind of like gotcha with staff, but you get your packet, you review your materials, ask your questions, and then sometimes I'm sure you do this in the jurisdictions that you serve in, as well as with the district. You may even ask staff questions that they already answered, but your purpose is to inform them, right? How did we get here? Where are we going? So that it's really clear, because the staff reports, but they'll probably watch you on TV or listen on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Good point.
And it's so frustrating, like some of us are doing the coastal. And staff go to a certain way. And the people on the coastal commission now will never go against staff, no matter how compelling it is. One of the commissioners that I took and brought down some projects, and she had a great project, and then she voted against it and said, "What happened?" She said, "Well, you didn't turn around staff, and so it offends me when board members just automatically do everything what the staff said. Like I said, 98% of the time you follow staff recommendation, but that's the example that points out that it's so frustrating when you're up against the wall.
Yeah.
You can't turn on staff and you're expected to.
Well, and it's nothing against staff, because staff is looking at the best interest of that organization. Not at the region at large, right? It's our jobs to look at, yes, that's the best for that organization. Yes, that's absolutely best for Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority, but is it the best for the region at large? You know, it
Depends on the interest.
it may not, that we may need to tweak that a little bit, right? Or at least have the discussion.
Oh, I was just saying, support and stuff, but I'd also have the dissent is helping. Kind of, it's like, I felt sometimes there's a feeling of not wanting to raise a point that might be against the popular opinion. You know, the outside of it, when you raise that, the reporters are actually outside. I don't raise it, you know, I'm the one constraining.
And that's the thing that happens on Zoom.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say from a staff perspective, you're getting your packets early, you have questions. Vet them early. I don't think there's any staff, as a former local government staffer, that doesn't want to hear the questions and open issues of an elected body or a member of the public, because there are lots of blind spots out there, and it is your job. It is your job to see those issues up. It, with that kind of pre-notice, just, you know, not the night of the meeting.
But I do think it's unfair, and Chris and I always do that. Our board meetings, if we have a question about something, we call up in advance, and say, give us an import, or I can tell you, I'm gonna pull this up, and I'm happy with the recommendation, but it's only fair to staff, I have some colleagues that like, you know, blindside, and I don't think that's fair to staff.
Questions.
Yeah.
Stand ahead of time.
Yeah, if you want to read that instability.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that goes back, what you just said, because I think that goes back to what we were discussing before, sometimes you have to repeat the questions to make sure that the public understands that there were questions asked and answered.
Right.
And we're just not sitting here rubber stamping something.
Right. I agree, and that was your point, and I wholeheartedly agree, and John, if that's gonna hear me, I'll even state it up front, I want folks to already ask this question for the sake of, well, I can repeat the answer to this question, you know, exactly, and we'll move on. Everyone's, they're gonna go, but folks need to know that there were questions that were asked, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that this has been vetted, explored, and reviewed the complexity. And I know Erica, she's a superstar, for sure, and I know you, and she, as it relates to records, I know that you've got great records management too, so that's definitely a resource for the public. Anything else on the article? Okay, I'm gonna start taking some. Next, this next piece, we've got 3 slides, just let's really take, just a quick party, how are you feeling? Yeah. But that's good, just a 5-minute. Wow, we're speaking a lot of attention depths.
Life does happen. So, we'll let you in on a little secret. Which workshops are those going? Like to. He was so I can let you out more early as this. Start saying the word.
Where's the crowd? Where's the crowd? So,
This one? Yeah. Okay, so, you talked a lot about. Important, some of the things that resonated with you, and that leads into your interest in having more. So I'll invite you to take a look at some samples of what some of the other jurisdictions have. I won't read those, I'll maybe pause for a couple of minutes. We get an opportunity to read them, and then maybe just ask you to point out 2 or 3 that you feel are important. That would be comfortable for this body. You of course represent another body in the council or the court or supervisors. What about this body? What if we see we're talking to the court or the city council, more maybe agency?
So I think this is a good one, and I've been guilty of it, and I've been accused of it, like on both, like I've accused and been accused, so never assume intent and do not ascribe motives. I think we're all trying to do the right thing.
And I think that's right. And we all approach, as you all we approach things from a different perspective. We all have our different backgrounds, and especially in a body like this, where you are here to represent your jurisdiction, but looking at what's best for the entire region. So that's a tough job. That's tough.
And I think lost interest and shared success of each other is we're all ultimately here for the shared success of the authority to make sure that it achieves its mission as opposed to our individual cities. While yes, we want our individual cities to be able to succeed as well, we need to make sure the authority succeeds so that our cities can succeed.
You pay big bucks to be here.
We do.
You guys are.
We need to number 2. The I to we, which for this authority would be. Our city to authority.
And I think that's a 2-step for you, because it is really, no longer being in campaigning mode as an individual. Because you are a council or supervisor here, and then get on another level in terms of representing the different jurisdictions for the success of this meeting.
I will tell you why staff is really pissed off when I come in and say, we need to get this done. And they know I mean them, but I say we, everything that we would be.
So at home, my name is we.
The royal.
Would dovetail onto that, just maintains a an authority-wide perspective while being mindful of our respective cities. Because that's also, I think, an area of frustration that sometimes we talk about the authority as like we are the governing board of the authority, but, and I'll speak to myself, like I'm also representative of 165,000 people over here, and am I doing what's best for them as a representative on this board?
And it's a balance, and it goes to some of the things you already talked about, moving the needle. I think someone's a 30% is better than 0. But then, Christopher, you talked about articulating what happens, why you're voting a particular way, or why this is important to you, or so whatever that might be. If it gets sticky, helping people understand again the interest versus the position of the needs.
And that was the thing there. About the only thing that was hard in the past. It wasn't the city of Salinas. I mean, they were looking at what they considered their interest, and they have this big thing to, get some speed out of where it is and they have to look at it too from their perspective as well. Well, with this and that was the only thing that they blamed some of the rest of us and they weren't doing a great thing finding another place that we would do it. And that was about the only thing that really caused us some difficulties in dealing with. But if I were sitting in Salinas, in the city of Salinas, I would probably look at it exactly like they did, you know, and I could justify an open landfill of how it got there, and there's a lot of history that we're probably all linked for. Yeah. Yeah.
Understanding that it's to put yourself in someone's shoes.
Because with the person that I am, if it were in King City, and King City had a problem with it, I would be helping King City.
And so what you said,
Right. Well, and I think that's where the authority is a little bit different, is because ultimately we are responsible with both. We are responsible for making sure our city is represented appropriately and that we're doing the right thing for the city while also trying to do the right thing for the authority as
The
a whole.
authority's not here without city.
Exactly.
no one is suggesting any of that. I have part.
You're right, God.
Well,
Yeah. You can Santa Clara and you get to. Your own, these are just to help generate ideas.
we have a tool to say. That's why I'm effectively as a whole.
That's why they need norms. So again, just take a minute or two to take a look. We call out 2 or 3 that you think would resonate, work well. It'd be important to have in terms of as you establish norms for this job.
I have a question, and it might be a little pointed, but it's just sheer curiosity. The number 7, city manager. 4. Do you, Patrick, as the general manager, do you meet regularly with certain board members?
Beginning. Consistent reach out. See what some. And some. Should come and ask me places. Might want to do it. It's been very good. Now, for me, if there's something we're gonna pull or something to question. But some board members have been interested in learning more, actually, in relationship. Specifically, getting to know a little bit more about the authorities and the holistic level. So, yes. And
So I think that it might be helpful for you to report out. Just so that those of us that don't meet or haven't been invited to meet on a regular basis have an understanding of who's meeting with you on a regular basis, and perhaps just having that. Saying, why is so and so meeting and so and so? I mean, just having that kind of a more open approach to that, I think might.
That's how you still owe me a freedom.
If someone's going to. So, yeah. I mean, back, since that years ago, say it's improved.
So that one is an important.
Yeah, just think, in terms of.
The norms can come sort of some protocols and expectations. So the invitation, Patrick, whoever the CEO of this organization, the invitation may need to be made every month, regular basis, or if there's, I'm gonna be going on a tour, put an invitation, I'm taking Anthony on a tour, anybody else want to join?
I think he does a pretty good job of that.
Definitely, they've got to. But it sounds like there's some interest in making sure the
Well,
communication.
that's my expectation to be able to meet with Patrick when that's relationships as far as like the city manager, mom said that, if I put a call into that and say, hey, I'd like to meet, and is it necessary for me as councilman know that Patrick's meeting with individuals? Understandable, because they're gonna have special interests and they're gonna want to know information, or they may not understand it.
Yeah, I think what might be coming forward is that there might be a question that's asked that maybe others, maybe wasn't vetted in part of staff report, but maybe come forward, maybe they think that, so just providing, using that for the benefit of the whole. Okay, anything else out there? 1 or 2 more, and then I've got, I think, one more city, examples.
Consider space we're currently living in, over 80, the communicating effectively with the public will be. Because there's all these questions about what is AB 361 sunsets, what or won't be available to us. Collected into a Zoom, or people on our folks are gonna be pushed back in that may not be a legal requirement. Have to ask ourselves best for at least whether participatory or not. At least that says to the one has always been in forefront, but now because we can't stream on Facebook and do those things, more people have seen it. And so I think that's critical for us to discuss as we move forward.
Well, like, it sounds like the whole meeting of the public meeting well informed, whatever means that is, and while the pandemic has done some very horrible things, it did teach us that we can communicate by Zoom, and using that moving forward is something beneficial.
Maybe for some communities,
Sorry,
for some communities.
for some communities. Okay, city of Fremont. For examples, give you a couple minutes to take a look.
You know where I charts.
You want to see the city as the latest north?
You know, I just want to offer, there's one on here. List that is, I mean, it's a great addition, but it's atypical, and that's number 11. Whereas the standing character is, as you were saying, Anthony. Sorry.
And the new past member orientation is not just for the past. It really isn't, and I know some people do that on a regular basis, because it's good back to basics. As I mentioned to someone recently, that Steph Curry goes back to basics all the time. Right? He goes back and practices, remembers the basics of the shot, doesn't just show up in the games.
I did the council. Whatever they called it at that time. They actually had that, they had sections where if you're a new council member, you go to this one, if you're an existing council member, you go to this one, and they covered slightly different things. As more of a refresher as opposed to the new numbers.
It's good to have these videos, it's good to have take a look at the strategic plan on a regular basis, so just take a look at it, but. Well, it really worth it, hopefully today. Anything else on here? Aside from 11, that's worth commenting or?
No, it's number 12.
8, respect the roles.
Well, the roles, and particularly the second sentence is part of it.
Which doesn't tell us that.
Right, so I think when you get down the form of government with the responsibilities described to, say, the executive committee or the director. And it's not, I haven't seen it much here, but I have seen it. I serve on where folks get uncomfortable because they're not on a certain committee and they want to be part of that, yet didn't get elected to it, so it's like, no, that needs to come back here. Well, then we add on to the process, right? Because all of a sudden, we get back. Rather than has been process that was laid out. I can see there.
So we make sure you understand, so as a result of this, the question is, as a result of members of this board having adapted their other.
No, I'm saying I have not seen it on this particular one, so I wanted that clear statement, but I have seen it with others and on other boards that I serve in where folks were uncomfortable because there was a decision that they felt they had a larger stake in, but so you had your bite on the apple tonight. You weren't able to build a consensus, so you wanted to come back to you wouldn't return. And all of a sudden you've added a month to the process due to time.
He's on the phone, trying to keep the process moving, and everybody understands the rules and understand the one. It's easier to happen, which goes back again to the communication piece, making sure that that's happening, so the whole process.
Actually, the second, we can need copies of these slides.
We can,
You'll have to slide that when we're done.
Yes, perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I mean. I would hope that this would never happen here, but number 9 is important now as part of their.
I was thinking the same.
We were managing
They don't like it.
Yeah, you can.
Just. Not me.
listen, because you are providing or taking away credibility of your staff. You're giving confidence from the public or taking away that confidence in your staff. And your role, one of the biggest roles is to hire the CEO. And so you get to do that, you get to do that in cost and private, which is one of the big things. So take that role seriously, and in this case, Catherine, his role is to manage the staff. At the policy level, at the center. So that's in the core of that.
Right.
And just real quickly, just get the information is number 12,
Number 12.
communicating with each other through technology and
Oh,
texting.
yes.
Get involved with the Freedom of Information Act and they get involved. So that's kind of really, and it's not there, but still nonetheless. And it also gives the impression that, you know, your side is supporting it.
And with Zoom,
I was gonna say, it makes sense with Zoom, it's even harder because you can't see what people are doing, especially if those mentioned before, so we'll give people that aren't turning their cameras on.
and the perception of, when there's some perception. Some stuff going on in the back, and it's not necessary. If somebody's doing emergency, anything else that, I just haven't had these songs. We all understand that, but the public sometimes.
I've seen so many miscommunications through technology, and the email sent, and you take it the wrong way, and I've seen people in offices as close to the computer bathroom that instead of walking down and talking to a colleague, they send an email to them rather than communicating. And if you lose something there, or sometimes it's misconstrued what said in your email.
But I think the problem is we've got to a culture where everybody plays CYA, and that's why they want emails as opposed to a face-to-face meeting. They want the emails so they can say, this is what I said, this is what your response was, here's the proof. Of your rights.
The California legal authorities.
That's right.
Yeah.
Kept very fast, this is like a single area specific plan, or the community plan for safety.
Okay, I'm gonna move this along. So develop norms for this body. Taking a look at the values of your strategic plan and your values are, where are we? Don't we have another back?
Got back to the.
Okay, so we can look at those. What norms would you like to agree upon? And I think you have these at your, that will go to the council. The norms here, so you can down this.
You get that.
Who we want?
Yes.
Okay. Like, what are you looking for?
Thank you.
I think you said that people can't remember more than 5, but I think most of the examples. You know, 10 or less. And actually, the best time to develop governing norms is when you have a body that's performing productive. So that as your membership changes, you know, you're bringing folks on board with good practices and behaviors.
So that's why I pointed out 9 was because I didn't, because we're all doing really well, but that doesn't mean that the next board will be.
And it's part of your onboarding. It's just like, I'm sure Patrick for, leadership guiding principles. What do I expect from my team, right? I mean, there are 5 or 6 things that are probably incorporated and communicated, internally. And a lot of them align with these, the strategic plan, values, I'm sure.
There's 9 we've written that we've expressed as.
That's the norms. Take a look at what's in front of you. Take a look, take a look at some of the things that you called out.
Sounds like you make recommendations of what to add.
Just to establish norms for this body. So we're just trying to help you along with providing some information. It could be something that we haven't heard as a example.
Well, one of the things that I think is important for this agency to focus on is equity, because we are a board that serves a lot of resource communities like Gonzalez and come up building so forth, and so we're not focusing on where the service cash exists, I think that. I think it's here, I think I've heard that.
So that can be, something we can look at in terms of values.
Yeah.
And, maybe board norms, so we can have a conversation about that. What does the board like? Which of these do you like, or do you want to move forward? Some of the ones that you've already articulated and called out, anything on the list that you see there. Remember, this says, just to feedback on was commented earlier, this becomes the culture of the board. So with the ongoing process and the new board members come on, you start to establish a culture that people know this is the way this line works. And that is good for hiring new staff, because people don't want to go somewhere when the board is dysfunctional or it looks, messy. So staff knowing that it's a stable board, people like it.
Like the second to last one on this list.
Second to last one.
I think it's pretty, it encompasses a lot of the other points on this particular list. It's approach the business of governing in a professional manner, conducting business in a way that brings honor to the institution.
So approach the business of governing in a professional manner. Okay. Anything else missing from here? From the list that you created, we can use this as our list. You can do that for an option. Anything missing? Somebody else? You have it. You have one.
And then as it relates to the strategic plan values, fiscal prudence, resourcefulness, customer service, community partnerships, innovation, integrity, public education, and efficiency. Any concerns about adding equity? Just kind of reading the room here.
I think equity, and Anthony, this is your ask, so I'll defer to you or ask you for your insight on it. But I think equity falls more within the strategic plan than it does on the norms.
You're right.
Board.
You're right.
But if there's something specific for the norms of the board that you would like to include in the language, I'm certainly open to it. It just, to me, the equity portion of it, I think, should be with, what we're trying to achieve overall for the common.
So now
It's gonna be more public facing.
Yeah.
It's gonna be more visible.
Yeah, I guess I just to clarify, then what I'm asking is if there's like the nods or no's to add it to your current list of strategic plan values.
Got it. Not the norms.
Yeah, I apologize, it wasn't clear. Thanks, Kimberly.
Yeah, so.
We'll look at it.
Well, that's the piece of this, balancing your life, clear, exactly what we propose. And we can make sure that that's.
Well, I think for the moment, equity is very general. So we're gonna advocate for something facing, whether it's the equity system,
Right, that's what I'm saying, now it's situated, it's not just equity, it's situational within there.
All of these. Do you look at the pictures, what's the cost, what's the people cost, what's the resource cost? As you try to do more innovation or technology that I know you're looking at what expense, what does that really go to? So all of these will have to be evaluated, and it's gonna be a balance for all of them,
Right.
and kind of a pro and con, how much, how far, what case, and if, when can we apply, when can we not apply, when is it? But it's the lens by which you try to make decisions and keeping those things in mind. And it's a balance. So it's important to us that we make a decision.
And in the situation, really, the way I see it is that a guy in baseball, who stands to get hurt the most by this? And it's the most like a resource community, that's fine.
So trying to be mindful of
I think one perhaps should be on the norms chart is agreement that we will recognize success and achievement, especially by those people that be employed. I think that's important. I think.
recognize success and achievements by those that, especially by those that we.
Right, because And we're doing a program through the school. And I personally, Patrick does a great job of uplifting his employees when they have success. And we made a point earlier about whether it's Patrick or someone else. So looking forward, I don't think that's anything that this organization makes. So I think it's important, right? Doing it.
Making space for that, because oftentimes project will be worked on for 2 years and then you'll be done like, now the next project is gonna look like. So forward it is. So how do we want to operationalize norms that you've identified? I mean, how do we assure that this happens?
Well,
Okay, bring it back and adopt our resolution.
And they're gonna be chief directly from or.
see that. A lot of our mission vision that.
So it can be hard to do, it can be something that you share with the public, and we bring it forward at a public meeting.
And
Say why it's important.
make sure the employees get an influence with as well, not just the board, not just the public. Make sure that the employees get training on it as well.
But the other thing is, as Patrick is saying, these can be read at every single meeting.
Well, and I want everybody to have a tattoo.
This doesn't matter.
We're having a overachiever.
Yeah.
No, but I think, we have this document, which is our agenda, but there are those things that live on this document, kind of like, yeah, I think having them. And we can. Agenda is important because the public, this is what they grab and they walk into the room, it's what they take with them. And as appropriate, reminding them that they are holding those items in their hands, so please read them, and agree to abide by those as we work together.
And as you discussed earlier, you model, what is expected of the. And so you'll have to hold yourselves accountable as an individual, and then when your neighbor is maybe. In the spirit of what is best for the agency or the community.
So does that mean we all get a bigger buttons in front of us with all the seats on it, so when somebody violates one, we hit a button and they get shocked? So,
That would be a good.
well, no, it would, because they're private.
Assuming good intent, we could be having a bad day, and we see a little less, that big bad days coming out and it's like.
Why didn't they shock the button?
Yeah, a little shock over me, and I just watched Stranger Things, so the shock thing is kind of very visible in my brain right now, and it's not a good one. So yeah, but again, remember that you hold yourself, and you hold one another. And that's our path. As a CEO, Patrick, or it was in that seat, it's your job to make sure that this board is, as running as effectively as absolutely possible. Just, hey, check it. Maybe I'm having a bad day. Just check it. Okay. Are we in agreement? Okay, sounds like we are. We're asking you. Find your agenda. You'll at Val, past the beginning, perhaps all of it. You can kind of feel that through the share with staff. And operationalize, you'll hold yourself accountable, and you will hold your colleagues accountable. Excellent. Congratulations. That's a big deal. I'm celebrating the fact.
Right now. So, before we jump into the nuts and bolts of the priority setting related to your strategic plan, we're going to take a quick look at your mission and vision as well. But we did want to just tout the accomplishments that you all identified, and I don't think I believe that each one of you said this, And that was just how pleased you were with how dedicated the staff members of Salinas Valley Recycle, so the staff send the word out, they probably know that as well, I think that's really critical. The group is really proud of fiscal stewardship of the organization, and prudence. And, you know, you can just see how beneficial it is that members of this board, along with others, identified that as a value in the previous strategic plan. It really did deliver the results, as Ben said earlier, so thank you for that. Maintenance of reasonable rates, we can't see it, but because of the Zoom, but each of you talked about really your interest to ensure that any service recipient was not overburdened with rates and critical that was, and really looking at it from a customer service perspective. And that the excitement about the high quality public information as well as public education programming. Compliance with SB 1383 is at the top of everyone's mind, so that is good. And challenging. And each one of you talked about just how committed you are to supporting and facilitating the results of the organization's mission. So, what else? Any other accomplishments that you wanted to? Purchase the building.
Well, I think strong, I think the tourism, but obviously here is that we actually managed services fully operational during the time of COVID.
That's huge.
It absolutely
It's
is.
huge.
Especially with more and more people at home producing more and more recycling, more and more garbage, we were able to maintain our service levels.
Yes, thanks for that. For show updates during the. Yep, over COVID, and that's information for people to understand. Excellent, thank you, Andrew.
I would say movement in closing Smith Street, like when
Progress.
progress. I mean, I was leaving office in 2018, that was at the zenith of frustration and the city and everything else, and coming back in 2020 and still having it, you know, it's
Yeah.
like we're actually. Ball is being moved, you know, half a yard at a time, but we're moving it down the field where I think we.
30% each year.
Yeah, that's it, man.
Nice.
But that, I agree, that's the biggest difference.
That's been a 10-year argument.
Or longer.
Yeah.
Great, nice. Anything else as it relates to accomplishments you want that we need to add to the list?
Right.
1383 infrastructure in place. Staff, do you guys want to shout out any other accomplishments are missing? Anything else?
Should want us to.
Your show. Thanks for being.
I think actually a little on, and that is that the public education component never stopped. We're very interested in success. And I think that's really important.
It is absolutely.
When we educate the next generation.
Yeah.
Parents, the kids are annoying. By that, they make sure I separate everything.
Yeah. Jumping back.
So the work is taking place in the town.
Nice. Okay.
Waited till you were.
You should see my 5-year-old granddaughter. And. Great ways, it's so cute.
Great, let's jump into vision. I'm gonna move this over. Any questions?
So just as a reminder, the vision is not necessarily something you'll accomplish tomorrow or the next year. Look into the future, seeing where you're going, that you may never achieve the vision.
Can I ask a question? When you look at our mission statement, are we gonna talk about it or we just look?
We're gonna have a look at it and confirm it, see if anything needs to be changed, does it still make sense? So this is your
vision.
vision statement. Reduce the amount of waste by promoting individual, and cooperative, and corporate responsibility to recover waste from a situation. Yeah, it's good. It's up on the charts. Does it still reflect the vision of the authority? Changes need to be made.
It's really lofty, but okay.
Yeah, that's.
Shoot for the one. So I have on this list.
Aww.
It's God. And that's why I think it's a vision.
Where's that number?
Oh, it's what it's about.
Or, you know,
Didn't change. Still reflect where you want to be, when you want to go.
So, yeah. Although I can think that we. So, yeah.
trying to learn.
Okay.
So,
Look at the next one.
Yes, yeah, right?
so under missions, right after the word. Third line, add the word victim. So it's a simple way to keep it, speaks a lot of from
Does everybody accept that friendly amendment?
I think so.
Anything else? And it's a higher, it's a higher procedure.
Missions must be one sense.
I'm fine with it. Everything else looks good?
Yeah.
Great, okay. Now we're moving on to.
Clearly, we want to get out of here. Keep going.
All right, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit. And start to move into the strategic plan. And so, as you know, we have interviews with each of you. And from those interviews, we identified the following themes during those interviews. So, compliance with the organic requirements, we've heard regular out. Engagement of third-party contractor to process organics. Relocation of something on site, relocation of administrative offices. Comprehensive communication with brand strategy, public education strategy. Governance, including more elections. As my limiting support. Clear guidelines related to the board agenda and supporting documentation. Review the JPA member jurisdiction contributions and orientation to the revenue forecast. Maintain reasonable rates, need for succession planning, invest in training and technology. And recruitment and selection of new general management. So this is what we've heard.
For the GPA.
There's some of what you written up there.
Okay, make sure we put that up so that you have it in front of you. So we have, I guess, this communication here. So we'll go ahead and take also, this is, I wanted to introduce this, give you a chance to see it, and just give you another 5-minute break. So, yeah, maybe like a 10-minute break. And then we'll fix these for Mr. Concentrate. It's hard to get.
I like the lawyers.
Yeah.
Let me first say that Magda's offering of wrapping up early, you guys are like way ahead of where we thought we were. Yes. You know what I was gonna say? And as the mayor's noticing, these are sweet scented markers. Right? Sorry. No worries. It's those kind of little. So based on the interviews that we conducted and based on your previous strategic plan, Meg and I framed up these 5 goal areas. This is how we've named them. Governance and collaboration, financial sustainability, facilities master planning, really that comprehensive, not just one building move and one lease, but really what's the broader strategy on facilities. Comply, adapt, and respond to regulatory changes. We've heard that come up a number of times today. And then high quality community engagement, which we've also heard a number of times today. So for your strategic plan updates, in addition to the naming of these 5 goal areas from the discussions with you and with staff, we've identified strategies under each. What will happen after we leave today, Magda and I will prepare a report that summarizes all of the discussion. We're going to invite you to come up here shortly and prioritize these items. And then we're going to provide a template for your staff to put together very high level implementation actions. So that you have a template. You already have a regular update that comes out, I think it's quarterly, just updating on the strategic plan. Is that right? Quarterly updates on the strategic plan? That's what I saw on your website.
Used to be, yeah.
Okay. And so whatever you agree as it relates to reporting, so you understand. So these are the 5 goal areas, the strategies, that fall under E. The strategies will be converted into the tactics, the owners, timeframes, so that as you're reporting results on whatever frequency that you choose, you can show that progress and you can celebrate those successes. And it's simple, it is simple matrix.
Christine, do you mind if I just mention?
Yeah.
I read some that a lot of the previous slide clarification, want to make sure we don't do anything bad with you, because it's being projected, but those, they're all listed up there. They are written here, they just.
Can you advance to the next slide? And here they are. For folks viewing from home.
So can I ask I'm just a little. Is the list that was read was different, there's two, one especially thing in mind, it was the question. Succession planning.
Correct. And so I'm gonna read through each of the tactics right here. Okay. So under governance and collaboration, the strategies include improve governance and board relations, provide equitable administrative support, clarify guidelines related to board agenda support documents, develop succession plan, and then invest in training and technology. So those are the strategies under that first goal. Any questions about those?
Or are you seeking feedback or suggestions, adding to it or no?
We certainly can add, we certainly can offer augmentations. I'd like to just read through all of these. Is that fair?
Yeah, totally.
The next is financial sustainability, review the JPA member jurisdictions, contribution, and orientation to revenue forecasts. Continue to pre-fund liabilities and debt, and then maintain reasonable rates, which we talked about. Third goal, facilities master planning, relocate the transfer station leads, relocate administrative office, some of these we're gonna get checked. Explore alternative and emerging technologies to reduce landfill dependence. The fourth is comply, adapt, and respond to regulatory change. Ensure compliance with new organic requirements and outreach. Engage a third-party contractor to process organics by July 1. But yeah. High quality community engagement, develop communications and branding strategy, and develop public education strategy. So, questions, additions, tweaks? Yeah.
So one of the things that we've kind of talked about in the city, and I think this is the forum to address it. I don't know if it's addressable or not. But as we review the JPA member jurisdictions, contributions, and orientation, the revenue forecast, I also think the makeup of it, and the formula in which governance, so going back to governance, well, I'll just be really direct. Like, I think the frustration with the city of Salinas is that the only element of voting power we have is to vote things down. And that can cause, as we're trying to work with, as a collaborative group, it's like we're just the three that if we vote no, it doesn't pass. And I don't know, I don't have that expertise to identify how a potential alternate solution could be for the three of us that are 61 or 63% of that revenue. I don't know if it's a way to vote. I don't know if it's all three of us vote yes, it must pass. But it just doesn't nurture good relationships if the large jurisdiction only has the ability to shut things down within the board. And so I don't know if it's the formula but I think I just know that's been a discussion internally, particularly with representatives over the years, that it's like, well, God, we're the ones that just the big red stamp no on things. And I'm not here, I mean, there's no ulterior motive other than to just say, I know that's a source of frustration with staff and with the representatives. And so I don't know if that's something that we analyze or review in the JPA memberships, the JPA member jurisdictions, just the government, the government's formula, I guess. I don't know if that's.
I guess I have to ask the question, well, the counter side of that coin would be. If it was. It's either all or none, right? If you go to a full weighted vote, which is always the concern. I hope that can be addressed through the structure with the executive board always having a member from the city of Salinas. The only other option I see is raising the threshold for a vote to pass rather than 50%, 75%. Right, which then puts you in a position where.
I just don't know what those options are, like, I would love to at least have a discussion, so I know what it is, I'm not here to say. Should be, or, I really am agree with you, I think the weighted vote doesn't help the situation, but it's just. It kind of just puts us as the bad guys who work on our, my launch, anything at any time. So,
Can we say review JP and members' contributions and governance alternatives?
That's a good way of putting it.
Because then you can spend a study session and kind of some legal support, take a look at the array of options or alternatives. Because I'm sure it comes in 10 different.
and I don't even know if we can change JPA. Or even.
All member.
Yeah.
Discussion. Your. Administration. Can say is, I think this was the thought process of. It's to create. There's the city. Percent of the public, then we're a subset of the city. For essence, for monitors, they can both give the city basically to make decisions. Way everybody else, so they can keep that creation of the city can still veto something that you needed a city vote asking.
Is you're going to explore other options, look at the pros and cons, and maybe that this is the best one. Maybe there's another model with the intent of trying to make the JPA as a board and as a JPA move forward, not be sort of us versus them. Right. In the spirit of collaboration.
We have weighted votes, the city has weighted votes on TMZ, there's weighted votes in other jurisdictions. I get it, like, I understand, but it's like when you walk in and sit down, it's just kind of. I don't know what that looks like, I don't have the expertise to know what those options look like. So it would just be even a good conversation, even if it's just conversation with no action, it's just an identifying component of like, what opportunities there may be.
Are you comfortable with the language in green apple?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm good with that. You go with that.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for having the courage to bring the topic up.
Uncomfortable. But it's also, I mean, it's just something I've just heard the chatter about for 10 years. And it's like, well,
Well, and there's also, there may be intermediary measures, there may be executive committee, there may be some other intermediary kind of decision tree alternative, so. Okay, other edits.
I'd like to change maintain reasonable rates to maintain equitable and reasonable rates.
Okay. I was like, you're a master of the Sharpie. Okay, now everybody said.
You do not want to spell this.
Especially in terms of all this authority.
You know,
Okay, facilities master planning. Any changes on this one?
well, I think we can strike number 2.
That's what I was getting to. Locating the admin office. Well, actually, there still is a relocation aspect of it, but it's not. Yeah.
All right.
they want to build it.
Okay,
They closed today, right?
Unless,
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
unless, let's say develop. Actually,
Well, we'll have to talk about relocation in August. There are some
issues.
So we'll keep one on there, delete two.
Okay.
Cool, no, I mean, that's good.
This one is.
Done. That's,
Or-
okay, it's done.
Well, they're already being started, and they start.
Gotcha.
You just want to get rid of it?
I'll have one if we're going to do that.
It's nothing uniform.
I honestly, guys, I can see us take just a universal position against unfunded mandates.
Well, look at you.
Yes,
Ah,
I agree.
like.
I think we need to get Patrick that story rather than we come to us and saying, here's another piece of legislation and it's gonna fall on our shoulders. I mean, he needs to know that we support him immediately, say, certain is just blanket.
Right, history is one giant and funded bank.
Exactly, you know, and that's why I'm taking a stand here. They agree now.
Do you guys have a legislative strategy?
We each have our own, but collectively, I don't know that we've used the voice of this agency for that, and I think this is a step in that.
Okay,
And actually, that's one of the things I was just gonna mention too, is maybe we add to it, is maybe we do add lobbying for the technology. For leveraging new technologies for organics processing and for reducing the dependency on landfills. Add that to the mandate of the agency.
No, I think you could say advocate.
Advocate, yeah.
Right.
We do small. Yeah, there are 3 chapters. And we're the largest chapter. And we actually all pay into a lobbyist group. And we have a legislative task force, so bringing that back to the board, I think it's frequently.
Definitely, find out what's going on, yeah.
I like that.
okay. Advocate against unfunded mandates.
Very proper.
Anything else here?
Well, I think Drew's point about technology, so advocate against unfunded mandates can.
Advocate for, yes. For emerging technologies, yes.
Any concerns about that? Any concerns with that?
Have quality community engagement, develop a comprehensive communication and branding strategy, develop a public education strategy.
I feel like we have a public education strategy at this point.
Maybe we're planning as opposed to developing it.
Is it
Or execute.
Yeah.
Continue to invest. I want to acknowledge the success of.
We have a good one.
Ryan.
Goodbye, Steve.
There's family.
It's
Good
me.
deal. He's got so.
Sure.
To your point, do we have something that's written down? Maybe kind of sort. But we do have branding and we call it marketing and branding. We have that every single year. So we renew that every year. But it might be good to put down in writing the publication strategy.
So as I recall, the comments for this one were, there was a little bit of confusion about whose role something was to do, on whether it goes back to the agency, whether it stays with this body. And I think just understanding that, it sounds like a great public education happening. But there may not be a strategy in terms of an understanding of what that is. That's what came up from the interviews. I'm not suggesting there is or isn't. That's what came up from the interviews.
Yeah, I just, it's, 1383 has been all encompassing and everyone's scrambling to figure out what we do. And so I'm thinking that that's where it's kind of coming from, this thought process or question. But our agency does have a public education strategy. We do have comprehensive marketing and branding strategy.
is for our agency and for all of our members. But we don't do specific education plans for each individual city, that's up to them. So we partner with them to get that understanding and our to this board of what that, how the board would like to have that. Yes.
Well, you know, to that point, for me, when I read that, my mind went to the schools that we're doing and all the ways on boards.
That's what life is.
Right, which is my interpretation of what that line means. And so if that's, if we're talking about the wider public, I think that's a much worse. Archery. Where perhaps it's, I don't just want to do busy work. You know,
Thank you.
I don't want to do that. I'm almost kind of removing that line to a degree, because I think we're doing it. Is there anybody who feels we're not? Or that
Which line, number one or number two?
Keeping them under high quality community engagement and just saying, having a comprehensive communication and branding strategy, which we already do, and then having a public education strategy. I mean, that just maintains the priority over the next 2 to
would you
3
change
years.
to maintain?
Yeah,
I was gonna say.
maintain or, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, that way it's just, it's still a priority, it's still a goal and a strategy for us, but it's implemented.
Here's the thing about the team that we already have, the fully thought out, great public education strategy.
We don't have a written one. We have that, that's what we were just talking about. For me, I've given the limitations of staff expressed about clothes, specifically around 1383 if we go all hands from that. My goal was not to give them the basic work of, hey, write it down, because I think we recognize the work happening in schools, the law based on awards, the pieces that come forward as we recognize community for their success. And so at this point, I think there was a comfort level.
Well, the reason why I wanted to go is because in the event that Matthew or whoever is in charge of the education part leaves, and there's a new person hired, I want them to have a template on what to do, so if they're ready to get their down management, what they do that, as opposed to having that ask after graduation, where you go, where you want to look for relationships, or have that consolidated document for new staff.
We're looking at these goals as 1 year or 5 years.
3 to 5. Typical, historically, we've done 3 years.
Mandy, you going anywhere in the next 3 years?
I don't know, are you?
Well, and I think that also ties into the develop succession planning as well. Is maybe as she gets ready to leave, if she does decide to leave, then that goes from here.
I see.
That's what we're proposing, I don't think.
Well, that's what I said. I think this part of the succession planning is making sure job roles and responsibilities are laid out for everything in team members.
We've had, for people who have moved, and I took over the position, I knew what it was. We just hired a new person, we have a whole onboarding process, so. In terms of someone coming into our program and knowing what the plan is. That is there, but I'm happy, I understand what you're saying. And if you guys have an actual document. That programs change. So Rachel, you know, a suggestion, it sounds like we're struggling with the first word, right? Yeah. We still think it is important, hearing public education strategy is important. Whether it's written today, it sounds like it's not written today, maybe it's written next month, maybe it's written in year 3, right, in terms of the process, so maybe we can play with what the verb is, I don't want to get stuck on that verb, but so having the public education.
Public education policy, something like that. Continue to deliver on public education policy.
Continue to deliver.
Includes making it.
And then the strategy, the actual work that happens. Maybe you'll prioritize it as well. Figure out which one to pick it.
You're just gonna job at Patrick, no one's gonna.
Yeah, I think this is fine. Wording. It really is the action items. The Patients and branding, I won't come back, same thing with public education. I think it provide one long model, it'll be a high level, these are the things we're doing, this is the priority we're doing in the schools and the community. I think in the action items, we'll capture what we develop the board in terms of.
Does that feel clear?
Yep.
Everybody has the same level of understanding around the expectations. And again, after the session today, Magda and I are going to prepare a report, and then staff will convert the strategies into some high-level work plans for the next couple of years that can be reported on whatever frequency that you choose.
I just have a question.
That was an interest articulated by the board. A little bit earlier, there was the discussion about the frequency of meetings with the general manager. And so there's just an interest that there's equity from each board member. Equity of support and engagement. What did you just add with?
Yeah.
So then it's not.
I think you were doing, okay, what is that? Just didn't know.
Is it board members or jurisdiction?
I would say Fitzpatrick is with more.
That's what I heard.
So that's what should be to the general meeting. Well, I don't do that, like, all the time.
So the only employee of the board is your general manager. So that's why we're saying, and so whatever those services or array of information or briefings or. Yep. Mhm. All right, does everybody have a marker in their hand that's not green apple? You have brown.
Cinnamon.
Or purple. See, blue, pink,
It has a color, which is fine.
green. All right, so each of you get 3 designs of your choice: check, heart, circle, star. And we would like you to place those markings of your choice next to the 3 strategies that you think are of highest priority across all of the 15 items. Yep. And you can't sell and you can't buy. You can't use all your check marks on one item. Those are the typical. Let's see what else.
Yes.
No.
But my question. Yes.
Okay, so why don't you all kind of gather together? There is a, folks, there's a step here. There's an up and a down. So just be careful when you go up, you need to. Yeah, when you go up, you need to come down. So just be aware. 3.
I don't want this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's also Joe wanted to all. Like, the kids know what I'm So we should be able to do four, because everyone should be able to, don't you go do another.
I just want more.
That's her fault.
I need a conversation better.
Red farm. So this is not close, well, he's going to. Sit down. Okay.
I only had three, so.
Sit down. Cross that one, but it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I know, it's a couple of. We're fine. Also.
Okay, good.
Well, I know. We should.
Hey,
That's a very important. Red, they mix for me at the color deficiency. Right. Okay, good. That's really good.
Yeah.
It's good.
I know.
Your economy.
Always.
That's good. That's not how.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Fine.
Second, please, meeting. All
right. Is what slide, let's see. Top priorities, there's two that got 4 votes: maintain equitable and reasonable rate, and explore alternatives and emerging technologies to reduce landfill dependence. That's 2 4s. Rated with 3, relocate the transfer station and lease. And clarify guidelines related to board agendas and supporting documents. And I have it 2. It's 2s. Invest in training and technology. And advocate against unfunded mandates and for emerging technologies. And I have 2 1s.
3 1.
Are there 3 ones?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Provide equitable administrative support with board members. Continue to pre-fund liabilities and debt. And continue to deliver the public education strategy. That feel like those are the priorities, and we'll rank these for you in the report. So from a staff perspective, as they're sorting the strategies under these 5 goals, they know which ones to tee up first and focus most of their efforts. Make sense?
So the other strategies stay, you're just prioritizing based on.
Yeah, so you've got a 3-year plan. This is a priority this year, this is a priority this year, this is priority this year, this one, and the 2s.
But the ones that were not checked are also part of the plan.
They are part of your strategic plan. They're just not gonna happen tomorrow. Make sense?
Well, none of it's gonna happen tomorrow, but.
Actually.
Second, Andrea. All right.
Thank you guys.
Good try.
Yeah.
I really realized with Bridget. She gave us all a shot to do it. That was a good strategic plan.
Nicole. So a little motivation, when you early work appears. You guys have done wonderful. Thank you very much. We really are going to end it early. And we worked harder. So wrap. Let's take a look at all of the work that you did. So in terms of next steps, we will bring a report back, as Christine has mentioned. You reconfirm your mission, you added a value to your value statement, you reconfirmed vision. You've talked about norms and developed norms. You've developed a strategic plan for the next 3 to 5 years. You've built relationships that I think, along with the because of doing lots of other things, got to know one another a little bit better, got to understand perhaps perspectives in terms of all of the things that you wrote about in terms of greatest lessons that we've all had, that you've had. So it's a really great day. You got a lot accomplished very quickly. So just not to belabor this too much more. Next steps, we'll be providing the report that we mentioned earlier. And then I just invite you now to maybe share one word in terms of the day, a key takeaway, or something that you just like to share in terms of your time together. And before we do that, I really want to thank you for your time, for really participating, for really engaging. We were all very active, very engaged, and that makes it easy for us. And it certainly makes sure that the work goes along and you will go away with a good product. So I really want to thank you, Stephen, and I really want to thank you. So with that, key takeaways from today that you'd like to share, we can just shout them out and we'll just jot those down.
Say one word.
Or if it's 2, it's probably big. Common ground.
Sentimental.
Judgmental, please. Right? Me. One.
Teamwork,
Yeah, enhance,
teamwork.
enhance camaraderie. Enhance camaraderie.
Enhanced for water, but that's the judge. I was just gonna say fun.
It was enjoyable. The process was enjoyable.
Enjoyable,
And manageable.
manageable,
And
efficient.
he had about 4 years ago, very contentious.
Yeah.
That's because I was area.
Did you want me to add home?
Yeah, but that now on. Humility.
Bully.
So before we wrap up, I just want to thank the admin team.
Yeah.
And it's total chaos, and we walked in today, everybody was here, then all the supplies, and so anyway, thank you very much. And all the extra.
They're awesome.
They are.
They are also
And
Are we adjourned?
Sure, actually, because South of Mr. See that the I was closed for the back, there's no action necessary. But I'll say thank you. I had a great time. Thank you guys for letting me crack jokes. I missed about being in this floor. See you. So enjoyed spending time. Thank you. So leadership.
Yes.
The key takeaways.
Because I.
Only if you put humility on first.